I don't know if you noticed, but I tend to wander. My dad always said management by walking around. I moderate by walking around. So Amy Ingersoll Johnson and I are running the mics for all of you to take part. But the first thing I wanted to provide our panelists was the opportunity to introduce themselves, as well as provide some thoughts some of their thoughts from the movie. So we'll start with Mark and we'll work down to Mark.
Sounds really good. My name is Mark Heinert. I can tell you it's much more comfortable to sit here in front of you than to watch a larger-than-life image of yourself on the screen. So I can sit here all night and have conversations with you guys, but watching that again is going to be something really hard to do. So I'm the program manager at YouthWorks. We work with runaway and homeless youth. Obviously, our focus is more in that younger age, so up to the age of 21 is who we provide services to. And we do have shelter locations both in Bismarck and in Fargo. And in terms of my thought or my reaction to the episode 1, I think it really was how they framed it in terms of the rights that we all have. And is it indeed something that we can solve? And I think you heard me on the video saying that it can be solved. I found myself looking for Wi-Fi when we arrived here to go, I got to find that number. There's a specific number that'll really help everyone put this into perspective, and this is it. A simple solution. A lot of times people are looking for, well, okay, so what can we really do about it? And believe it or not, in our country, quick raise of hands if you've deducted your mortgage interest or you've made a deduction of your housing payment. All right, about half of the people in the room. Believe it or not, our federal government has a cap on that says, for all of the super wealthy in this room, which I don't see any necessarily, if you can only deduct your first $1 million worth of your home. Okay, so stay there with me. So if you can only deduct $1 million value of your home, we've done the math. And believe it or not, if we just reduce that to $500,000, if we just say, I tell you what, your home, we're just going to deduct $500,000 worth of the value of your home instead of this $1 million. Over the course of 10 years, we'd have $95 billion with a B dollars. The annual budget for HUD to meet the discretionary needs of people with special needs and housing is actually only $38 million a year. And as the video shared, it's capped. So we can make some changes. That would be my overriding theme for us to be thinking about is these are choices. We can make choices. We can make housing available to people, and that's just one small example. We could change the mortgage insurance deduction from $1 million to just $500,000, and you would literally produce $95 billion within the next 10 years. So think of that as I pass the mic to Jenna.
Thanks, Mark. First of all, Mark, you did a phenomenal job in the video, so you really represented the homeless well, so thank you. Yeah, and thank you for making the video. We need that in North Dakota. So a big round of applause, yeah. So you said introduce yourself and talk a little bit about the impact of homelessness within our agency. So I'm Jenna Gullo. I run the United Way here in Bismarck, Mandam. I always had a calling, I can't explain it, but a calling to help others and serve the poor. I used to do mission work. And so I was actually over in Rwanda when I received an email from the then First Lady and now Senator's wife, Mikey Hoven, telling me that the United Way job was available. And that's all it was. It was just a simple email, just wanted to let you know. And I'll be completely honest, at the time I thought United Way was a fundraiser, and I hate asking for money, to be honest. And I thought, no, I'm here to change lives. Well, I never in a million years thought that we would be opening up a homeless shelter. Even a year ago, you could have asked me, and I said, oh, good, I would have never thought that to be the case. I ended up applying for the United Way job from Nairobi, Kenya. I became a foster parent, And I also saw the poverty that exists in our backyard. We have 1 in 5 children who are going hungry in Bismarck, Mandan. That is just ridiculous. And when we looked at the issue of homelessness, it's been a system that has been broken for a number of years. Not irreparable, but broken. So in October 27th, actually, a homeless provider asked me if United Way would consider sheltering the homeless, because we were losing our only homeless shelter in town. And it's not a part of our mission, it's not what we do, but we knew the alternative was that people really could have died outside. Thankfully, because of a lot of helping hands, no one did this last winter. United Way and our partners met with the homeless nightly and sheltered people nightly since October 27th. We originally just agreed to do it for the month of November. But then at the end of November, we were asked to do it for the entire winter. At the end of winter, there still wasn't a concrete plan or viable agency. And so we decided to open up a shelter and build it, if that's what we need to do. And I honestly want to invite each of you to be a part of this, because we can build it together. And I think it takes not just the nonprofit sector, and that's the beauty of United Way is we're a nonprofit, but we also represent the business community and the government. I mean, we bring people around the table, and that's part of what we do. So we can end long-term homelessness. I 100% agree with the folks on the film. It's a manageable problem. But we also need to start increasing awareness, which is a big reason why I'm so happy that you did this for us. People are afraid of the homeless, and it kills me. It just kills me, because I love the people that we serve. Even Chuck, that calls me a socialist. It's not the first time I've been called a socialist in my life. But exposing people and increasing awareness is one of the biggest steps. I had a 3rd grader at Liberty Elementary ask me, well, who are the homeless? This was just last week. Well, I can tell you, one of our doctors here in town, his son's homeless, addicted to meth and homeless. I can also tell you that a banker, a 29-year-old girl in Mandan, works at a bank and her dad's homeless. And I told this little boy, it's little boys and girls just like you. It's one of our clients who just had a baby at St. A's on Friday night. Beautiful baby girl, and giving her up for adoption. And talk about tough choices. She actually said to me, and I cried earlier today telling the story, so I'm not going to now, but she said to me, I want her to go to a Christian family so she learns about forgiveness. But that's the guilt that she felt inside, and yet what a gift and what a courageous choice she made for this baby. So I invite you to be a part of it, because I do think that we can solve this problem.
My name is Mark Meyer. I'm the founder and executive director of the Heaven's Helper Soup Cafe. And the Soup Cafe is a kitchen, but we run it as a restaurant and offer a couple homemade soups a day, a couple sandwiches, salad bar, dessert bar, things like that, from 11 in the morning till 7 at night. So really, we do this 6 days a week, except Saturday we close at 5. But at any rate, we give the opportunity for anybody who is in crisis or just wants a good meal to be able to come down to the Soup Cafe and get something nutritious. Really no reason anybody in Bismarck should go hungry, really, if they have the opportunity. And it was really a well-done documentary. I really enjoyed watching it, and it just really puts a face on homelessness instead of this stigma that's out there, and it just really, everybody's one crisis away from homelessness. And so I cook soup. I'm not a big talker like these guys here, so I'm going to end it there.
Thank you, Mark. So,
I don't cook, by the way, so I'm jealous.
so what I would like to do now is open the floor to you all. What are your questions? What are your thoughts? What did you get out of the movie? And if somebody doesn't raise their hand, I'm going to stick a mic in somebody's face.
Jenna, you were talking about building a homeless shelter. Where are the homeless sheltered right now in Bismarck and Mandan?
United Way leases out 14 rooms at the Sunrise Building. It's the old Prince Hotel. It's basically on 3rd and Main right downtown. We serve men, women, and children. We had 49 people that we sheltered last night. What's really interesting is we're trying to figure out the trends, but it is so unpredictable. In July, we were actually up to 65 people, which makes no sense because it was so warm. And I remember a funder telling us, well, it's good that they feel safe, which is good. But then it dipped down when it got really cold to 40. Now it's back up to 49. So United Way is not in charge of the whole building. We did make significant changes to the building thanks to some really good volunteers we recruited, Mikey Hoven and Bonnie Daniel. And so they were able to get in-kind donations of flooring, get a fireplace, 55-inch flat screen TV. The goal was to make it as nice as possible because we didn't want it to be like people were coming to, like it was jail or prison or institutionalized. We wanted to make a home for them, which is interesting, with this series. But that's what we wanted, and we've transformed the look and feel of it without spending any United Way dollars on that. So it's really neat. We have volunteers that serve meals Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, which are the opposite days of the banquet. And that's because many people, last winter it started because Mark you opened in maybe January, did you? January 8th. So there was a couple months where people didn't have anywhere to eat. And so that's when we started having volunteers help us out with food. And then we continued it because so many people work all day and might not be able to get to Mark's Soup Cafe, which is phenomenal if you haven't been there. And also people have some mobility limitations as well. And it's a great way to expose volunteers to the homeless and the work that we're doing.
Just want to make sure, you asked shelters, as in plural. We're also a part of, we're actually reinventing our local homeless coalition, and we're a part of that. And so we have many people that are part of the solution, and whether that be, the Abused Adult Resource Center providing services to victims of domestic violence. Welcome House has an emergency shelter for families. Obviously, I recommend Transitional Living. I represent YouthWorks, and we provide that for youth. And so I don't want to keep continuing because there's a lot of people that are providing some of those services to those people that are in need. And there are, in addition to the emergency shelter, our real solution, obviously based on this, you can tell it's not to have just emergency shelter. It's to get people quickly into permanent housing, and so that people can have a place of their own and not just be in that shelter. And so that's been something that Jen has been a part of, a United Way, and the community is trying to figure out how we can more quickly move people from emergency shelter into a more permanent apartment for themselves, or transitional, or something that is beyond that. So.
Following up on that, is the Ruth Myers house, is that still open, the old Baptist home?
Yeah, good question. Ruth Myers Hospitality House is still open. It just no longer provides emergency shelter. It now just provides transitional housing, and it also has some permanent apartments. And so they are still providing services in the community. They're just no longer providing that emergency shelter. So
Okay,
thank you.
Thanks.
Is there somebody else over here that had? First, I want to say thank you. That was an exceptional film, and what I find very
You had talked about research and academics. I think it's so important to hear the lived experience and to hear those people that have experienced homelessness. One of the things that is important is that we are all one step away from homelessness today. It could be a crisis of medical crisis. It could be whatever. We all can be homeless. Myself, I lost my husband. I have 2 kids with health issues. Easily I can be homeless. So we need to stop the stigma in regards to it's people that don't have education or things like that. It's all of us that could be homeless. The second thing I want to bring up is the definition of homeless, and I will beat this to death. I work for the state McKinney-Vento Homeless Education Program. We have 1,300 individuals, kids identified, kindergarten through 12th grade right now that are experiencing homelessness. And it's not in shelters. It's doubled up. And a lot of people think that doubled up is okay. It's not. We have kids trafficking, being trafficked for a place to stay. We have families in crisis situations, abusive situations, so they have a place to stay. I mean, 1,300 of our kids, and again, we struggle with identification, are homeless right now. And so we do have to look at those systems that are broken and that are causing the problem. Because I will tell you, these people, the experiences that they've gone through and what they're going through daily, we need to look at our systems to better serve. It's broken. We need to fix it.
If I could speak to that, Beth. One of the things we see at our organization, because of the young age of people that we're working with, is it's young people that are in transition to independence. And we do have an overrepresentation of several groups of individuals. And I'll just share the numbers, and you can kind of think about what that might mean. Believe it or not, here in our community, 42% of the people that our agency works with that are homeless are formerly foster youth or youth that were incarcerated in the correctional centers. And so when you start thinking about, some of the systemic challenges that exists, for us, it starts right there. A second population that is grossly overrepresented is members of the LGBTQ community. And unfortunately, it's often the time in that early adulthood when you're sharing, you're coming out, and sometimes families aren't as accepting. I think we know in our community that does happen. And so, yes, we do see an overrepresentation of that population. We also have a very unfortunate overrepresentation of minority people of color. In particular, the Native American population is way overrepresented. Our current statistics, I believe 9 to 11% of Bismarck Mandan is Native American. And in our agency, and I believe in most of the organizations, it's more like 40% or as high as 40 to 50% that are Native American who are experiencing homelessness. And so it is important to zero in also on there's some particular groups that are overrepresented. And the last group is individuals with behavioral health issues, and I know that Governor Burgum has done a good job of drawing attention to that topic. And within our organization, out of the people that we're serving that are homeless, 56% of the individuals that we're serving are actually homeless. So it is about the stories for sure. It is about getting individual information out there, but I think it's also about kind of taking a look at some of the hard data and thinking about, now, why is this happening to this particular group, or what can we be doing to try to address some of those challenges? And we're trying our best to address some of them, but these are some large systemic issues.
Thank you guys all for what you do for our community. I have one question. If you could pick, what is your biggest challenge that you see most frequently by the population that you served, what would you say that would be? Or I wish we had this in our community that we don't have now.
For us at the Heaven's Helper Soup Cafe, the biggest challenge I see is, we're a feeding ministry, and that's what we do. And we are the landing place when someone's in a crisis, they need to eat, and they just, lost their apartment, they got, something's going on with the family, whatever it is. There's always a crisis that you kind of feel helpless, and you'd you'd like to be able to fix all these different issues and problems, but you can't. And so that's one of the things that is most frustrating for us, is that we can only do so much, but that's why we have the community and the different agencies to be able to piece those in. So that's the biggest challenge for us.
But I must say you do a lot. So thank you, Mark, for having such a safe refuge for people. There's many challenges, but you asked the biggest. I think the biggest issue is trying to navigate Bismarck, Mandan, and access to services. It's hard for a lot of providers to know who's doing what and when they're providing it and how much, and when they do have money, when they don't have money. And then when you don't have transportation, how are you going to get there? And so a lot of people require in-person meetings. Well, that makes it very difficult. A lot of people have waiting lists. Obviously, affordable housing at the end of the day is probably the biggest need and biggest challenge. But to even get to that point, to be able to have affordable housing, it's hard to really find your way.
For me, on the ground level, what we're seeing time and time again is the need in our community for a shelter that can be provided for people that are currently under the influence of drugs or alcohol. And we have a great risk of people dying on the streets more because there isn't that level of service that's available. And a secondary aspect of that is, or well, I should say more of a bigger picture issue, in addition to the housing affordability, is just the judgments. Judgments are being bestowed upon people like you would not believe. And the time that I spend with individuals one-on-one, and the stories that they're sharing about their challenges to find work, their challenges to be treated with respect, looking at someone in the eye and treating, this is the human family, and it is about dignity. And so for me, it kind of supersedes everything else. It's just being relational and looking people in the eye and treating us all as human beings. That's what our biggest challenge is finding ways to not go to the other side of the sidewalk because this person looks scary, and recognizing and realizing that just because someone looks different than you doesn't necessarily mean they're going to harm you. Most of the individuals that are homeless are more likely to be victims of assault than they are to commit assault or to harm anyone else. And so some of those stigmas, I think, they still are pervasive within our community. I believe they still occur. Of course, we're preaching to the choir. This is a good crew. I'm sure none of you have done that.
So when I said at the beginning of this that I was honored to do this, it's my job. I like doing these things, so that was part of it. But the other part of it is from 2012 to the middle of 2013, I was homeless. My family was homeless. Our landlord died, and we couldn't afford a place. And so this touches. And God's honest truth, this is the first time I've ever talked about it publicly. And it's not a topic we talk about. We don't talk about the struggles we're having. We don't talk about how we can help each other. We don't talk about what might we do for that other person. We tend to turn the other way and ignore the things that make us uncomfortable. And I'm just as guilty as anybody else. Because if I was willing to face what I dealt with and what my kids dealt with, and what my wife dealt with, I wouldn't have started choking up a little bit when I started talking about this. So, by the lack of hands, I'm assuming that we are coming to the end here, but I would like to ask our panelists one last question. What can we do to help address the homelessness issue in Bismarck, North Dakota? Sky's the limit.
That's a good question. So I think it starts with what I ended with, which is dignity. So to treat each other as humans. And the second part is opportunities. I believe it was on the video there was some information also discussed and shared about people that have been convicted of felonies or people that have legal charges that make it harder for them to accomplish things. And so I would say we have members of the community here to not be afraid to employ someone because they have something on their record. If you're a landlord, to be able to look at someone for who they are and what their actions are now, not what their actions were in the past. I love policy and politics. Got good news, by the way, today. Today at the state, the budget was announced, and there will be $20 million in the Housing Incentive Fund, which is going to be allocated to provide affordable housing within the state of North Dakota. And so there's some things for us to celebrate. And in terms of action, it can also be some of that advocacy. And you saw the numbers in the video talking about the North Dakota Homeless Grant. And oh boy, I know there are legislators who are tired of looking at me, hearing me talk about this. And my family's here and they've heard me say this. And like, yeah, Dad, I've heard it. So the mansion for our governor cost $5 million. Okay, just sit on that. $5 million. We set aside $300,000 for all the homeless people in North Dakota for 2 years.
I think there's a couple things that we could be doing. First of all, I second what Mark mentioned. But I think we need the government, and I think Governor Burgum demonstrated this with his budget proposal. But we also need local government to be involved in making sure we're taking care of the needs of the homeless, of all homeless, because it makes our community better. So please talk to your commissioners, city, county, and then also our legislators. But then also give, whether it's to Youth Works or to Heaven's Helper Soup Cafe or to make sure we keep a United Way homeless shelter open. You know, if some of it is related to money. If we can raise an extra $100,000, we'll stay open 24/7 and have a drop-in center, which is what we really need for the people who are most vulnerable in our community. Volunteer, show up. We need you. We rely on 90% of our workforce is on volunteers at United Way. Get to know the poor and see them as people. It's powerful. And then thirdly, I would say pray. Doesn't matter what denomination, what religion, keep people in your prayers because they need them. We all need them. And I think we all believe that if we can come together, we really can end long-term homelessness. I can't repeat that enough. It's not necessarily just a money problem. It's also coming together in a way that we're a force for good.
I believe that the first step is really getting out of that comfort zone and associating with maybe some people who aren't like you. So many times we live in our own little world. We go to work, we do our things, and how often do we get a chance to interact with the homeless? You might see someone walking on the sidewalk, they might have a backpack, they may not be. But, I would encourage people to, I'm not trying to do a shameless plug for the Soup Cafe, but we're kind of the highways and byways of a lot of these folks. And what's nice about the Soup Cafe is that you can come there to eat and be able to sit down and visit with someone who maybe you'd never cross paths with, and be able to start to speak into their lives and have an opportunity to get to know these people. Even better, we've got many opportunities to volunteer where you are actually volunteering at the soup kitchen, getting to wait on people and treat them with love and respect. And I think it's difficult to solve this issue is if you don't have an opportunity to know who these homeless are and be able to put a name and a face on each and every situation, because otherwise it's out there but it's not in front of you. So I would just encourage people to interact, have opportunities to interact with people on a neutral basis. And yeah, thank you.
I just wanted to add one more thing, it's for all of us to consider this evening, and that is that we had a fourth panelist who is a homeless individual who is not here with us today. And I'm saying that so that we can draw attention to the fact that individuals that are without a place to stay are surviving, just like Max said on the video, day to day to figure out how they're going to get their basic needs met. And it's incredibly difficult to meet your basic needs. So some of these ideas of, talk to your local legislators and do this advocacy is something that I think we all need to do as a community, and we need to be that voice because, frankly, individuals that are struggling with homelessness cannot do it. They're struggling to survive. And I'm not sure why our panelists can't be here tonight, but I'm comfortable saying that life is more of a struggle, and so it was easier for me to know that I could make it here tonight and be with you, just like it's easier for me to know that I have a home. So keep that in mind, that we kind of all need to be the voice for individuals that might not be able to have that voice for themselves.
So I want you all to give a round of applause to Mark Heinert, Jenna Golo, and Mark Meyer for their awesome job as panelists here in Bismarck. And I'd also like to ask you to give a round of applause for the human family. Thank you and have a good night. And don't forget to drop off the surveys.